Hi, Mary. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's see. I'm going to look at your bio here. You're a graduate of the University of North Iowa, a certified grief counselor and therapeutic art coach. Tell me, what is a therapeutic art coach?
Well, art can help us heal through trauma and grief. And so I've taken training because I'm so interested in creativity so that I can help other people through different art projects and programs at the place I work and with the grief retreats I hold. So I'm really into creativity, even though I don't consider myself an artist, but a writer.
Well, a writer is a creative artist in a sense, yeah. I think
I'm a wordsmith.
I think that authors would probably insist that they are artists, unless you write, encyclopedias, perhaps. But any kind of storytelling is certainly an art form, I would think. Let me go back to that therapeutic art coach again. So people would come to you if somebody died in their family, they're having a traumatic experience, and you would give them a pencil or a paintbrush and say, here you go, and hope you feel better. I mean, is that kind of the idea?
Well, I do a lot of expressive writing for healing classes, which is basically journaling your way through grief. But I also run a grief retreat every year, and it'll be 6 years this year. And I found that when we have the hands-on activities, it really is healing. Even if you aren't an artist or you don't think you have a creative bone in your body, there's something, and science proves it. There's something about working with your hands, and it's an active way to work your way through things, not just grief, but any kind of trauma, a job loss, or anything that you are having trouble working your way through. Science is behind it. Being creative can help us. It has a lot of therapeutic benefits, including for physical, mental health, for our emotional health. And so that's how I work it in the different programs. I'm a program coordinator at a spirituality center. So I plan the programs. So I've been doing a lot around creativity, especially with COVID-19 and the pandemic, because people just naturally turned to creative ways to deal with with that. We saw people drawing on sidewalks and putting hearts in their windows, or sitting down and doing board games with their kids, or finding creative ways to teach their kids, or baking or gardening. All of that we just were naturally drawn to because our bodies and our minds know that will help us heal.
I think that's interesting because I know that people that I've interviewed on the show who are creative artists by trade have had a lot more time to sort of ply their craft. But the people that you are working with are not necessarily artists by trade, right?
Definitely not. So just to take the act of baking, for an example, there's something in us that was drawn to that during the pandemic. People were just drawn to maybe things they did in their childhood, or things they were interested in their childhood, and going out in nature. All of that is creativity. So when we talk about creativity, there's many people who think of, oh, a painting on the wall, right? That's what creativity is, or wood carving or quilting. And I'm not creative, right? That's what too many people think. But we are all designed to be creative. So our bodies are designed and our minds are designed to create. And you see that in little kids. You see that in children. They don't care if they're coloring inside of the lines. They don't care if they're getting dirty with making something out of clay or Play-Doh or dirt and making mud pies. So we were built to do those things. And so during times that are tough, that's what we need to turn back to. Or we just need to learn how to play again. That's what we did when we were children, and we will be happier for it. And so it's not just for trauma or grief, or the people who do this for a living, they get lost in it. And we all have something we can get lost in. And so, whatever that is, That's what we were designed to do. So we need to discover or rediscover those passions and what it is that makes us feel alive. And so there's a lot of, I wrote the whole book on creativity. I did a lot of research on creativity and delved into it deep. So what I already knew in my heart, for me, it was words. For my mother, it was quilting and the wood carving and the painting. And for siblings, there's photography. There's a brother who also does wood carving. So I saw it in other people, and I knew instinctively that we all need that every single one of us needs that. And something like the pandemic brought that to the surface, or something like grief brings that to the surface. How do we work through things? How do we get through the tough? Because we're all going to have the tough times in our life. We're all going to lose somebody in our life. And so there is something to creativity that is healing for all of us.
I noticed on your bio that it says you have 8 children.
Yes.
Wow, congratulations.
And my youngest is 17. She'll be turning 18 this year. So to me, it's like, I've never been anything but a mother and a wife for so many years. And then my husband passed away in 2012. And then when my daughter talks about leaving home, I think that's going to be the first time I'll be totally alone, is if and when she does move away as an adult. Because at college, I had a roommate, and then I got married, and then I had children, and it'll be something I'll have to work through, is that empty nest that people talk about.
8 children, you must have had a huge house.
We did. I moved from a 4-bedroom house almost 3 years ago, 4-bedroom, 2-story house with a basement and an attic and a garage and a huge backyard, to a tiny 760 square foot house. Quite a difference with my youngest daughter and this tiny small space. You get a lot of stuff when you have a big house. And when you have a large family, there's a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah. You must have had a great yard sale at that point.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
And it was kind of freeing, but there's a couple things I miss.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that. That would have been a lifetime job, just raising 8 children. I want to circle back to something you said about children. And having just said that you had 8 children, I'm going to consider you an expert on children and raising children. Children start out creative, and then as they get older, they're taught almost not to be. Why do you suppose that is? Why do we stunt that ability in kids?
I don't think we do it consciously or on purpose. It's not like we don't want our children to be creative, but I think our society and the system, the educational system even, and teachers will tell you this, it's hard to think outside of the box in the classroom, because you have the tests and you have to teach to the tests. And so in order for the children to pass the test, they've got to learn things a certain way. When I learned how to read before I attended first grade, and I would sneak a book underneath my desk and be reading and reading and reading while everybody else was struggling with the phonics lessons, I had that book pulled away from me. And the teacher said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You haven't learned how to read yet," because she hadn't taught me. And I said, "Well, I already know how." And she said, "No, you don't." And she was almost angry because she had not taught me. And she said, "I learned how to read wrong." But yet I could read all these books while these other children were struggling. Coloring outside the lines is another thing. We don't consciously want to stunt our children's creative growth and by making them color inside the lines. But some of us were told that it's not the right way to color if you are going outside of the lines. And so it's when we get jobs and we are raising families, art and creativity and playing seems like something that you need to save for leisure time. And so what's leisure time? Do any of us really know what leisure time is? We need to learn how to play again. George Land did a study, I think it was 1965, because NASA engineers need the most creative people. And so he designed a test that the NASA engineers could take. And then they would decide, is this person a creative genius, or are they able to think outside of the box? Are they able to be innovative? I'm not sure why he decided to give it to 5-year-old kids in Head Start, which is a government-funded preschool program for poor children. But he took that same test that he was giving NASA engineers and gave it to these kids. And those kids scored in the 98th percentile for creative geniuses.
Wow.
And then he gave it to them when they were 10, and he gave it to them when they were 15, and it was going down from that 98% creative level down to 13% or something like that when they're 15 years old. But when he gave it to adults, over 200,000 adults, it was a dismal 2%.
Wow.
I mean, if you think about that, what happens to us between the ages of 5 and the ages of adulthood that makes us stop being that creative genius we once were? I don't have the answer. I don't know what one thing, but I think it's a lot of things. I think that somebody telling you you can't read right now because you have to do math and you're supposed to listen to me, or you can't color outside of the lines, or you've got to do your job this way, or you're going to be a factory worker and you have to know how to follow rules. I think it's a combination of all of that. And the fact that as we get into adulthood, we can't necessarily be so creative because we have to fit with the job that we're doing, or we have to fit with our peers. But we all know people who never did fit in, right? And who stayed creative and who never lost sight of what it was they wanted as a child. And we might even envy that, but we can get some of that back. We can look back to our childhood, look to see what it was that we got lost in as a child, and as adults, work some of that stuff into our lives again. So just to answer your question, I don't think we do it on purpose to our kids, but I think that the way we live in our society and the expectations, it becomes that kids lose that. Teachers have told me that the same children who love to read in 1st and 2nd grade, when it gets to be 3rd or 4th grade, are starting to lose the love of reading. And they don't exactly know why either, because they don't want to read for enjoyment anymore, because they have to read for school, and it has to be what somebody chose for them. I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
Well, it brings up a couple of interesting points, what you said. Number one, children between the ages of, I think, a year and a half to about 5 or 6 can pick up any language that's being spoken around them and be completely bilingual, trilingual. I've seen kids that just could flip from one language to another, and it was just all one language in their head. I can remember as a kid, I remember a friend of mine, his parents were Italian immigrants who spoke no English in the house. And when his mother would speak to him in Italian, he would answer in English to her. And she didn't understand a word that he was saying. So he would have to flip back to Italian to say, right? But in his head, it was just one language. By the time kids reach 5 or 6 years old, they lose that ability and have to learn the language like adults do. And it's very difficult, right? The other thing that's interesting, what you said, creativity knows no time clock. And I think that's one of the reasons why we start to lose it. Because there are things like you got to go to bed. You have to wake up at a certain time. You have to do X, Y, and Z between 9, 10, and 11. All these schedules, I think, stunt creativity. Because the creative people that I know, and I'm one of them, our thoughts flow in and out anytime, whenever. Some of my best creative thoughts have been when I'm just about to fall asleep, in that kind of twilight moment, and I'll have to get up and find something to write it down with, or record it if it's music, and it's very interesting. But I think just generally speaking, the way our society is set up with schedules and 9 to 5, this and that, it's definitely no good for creativity.
You need to keep a notebook by your bed so that you don't have to get up and lose that thought. So just keep a notebook by your bed, because science has shown us too that the best thoughts come when we're, hey, this is good news for us daydreamers. The best ideas come when we're not trying so hard to bring them to the surface, when we're taking a walk
Right.
or in the shower, or like you said, as you're drifting off to sleep, or you'll wake up with it at 2 a.m. And that's why I always tell people, well, keep a notebook by your bed, because those are where some of the best ideas come from. And then there's the idea of getting lost in the flow, because that's also what happens when we discover something, a passion, or we discover something that we love. You can get lost in the flow,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's good for you too. So I might get up on a Saturday when I don't have to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'll pick up a pen and paper. Even before I get dressed, I'll pick up a pen and paper, and I'll certainly have my cup of coffee next to me, and I'll begin writing. And then my daughter will interrupt me, and she'll say, are we even going to eat today? And I'll look at the clock, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm still in my pajamas, and my hair is a mess, and I forgot to eat breakfast, and I forgot to get dressed. But that's what happens when we get lost in something that we can love. And if that happens, pay attention to that, because that's probably what we need to work more into. I mean, I can't do that when I have to go to work and head to the office, but the days that I can do it, it's so good for me to go ahead and do that. And I've done that for as long as I can remember. Is when I am writing, I can get lost. And my kids grew up with a mom who's sitting at her desk writing, and they would interrupt me to tell me something, and they knew the look. They knew that when I was looking at them, I didn't hear a word they said, because my head was still in what I was doing. And artists do that, and musicians do that, and you can get lost in whatever it is you love. But that's actually something that's good for us. And so we want to work that into our everyday life. And if it can't be every day, at least the weekends or an evening or two, we want to get to that state where we get lost in whatever it is we love.
We have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Your book is called what?
Called to be Creative, a guide to reigniting your creativity.
Okay. And do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, you can find me at www.marypotterkenyon.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Just look for Mary Potter Kenyon.
Great. Mary, thanks so much for coming on. This was an